The 2009 crime drama Dexter has found new life in recent years, something most were not expecting after the poorly received final seasons and the especially disastrous finale.
It's horrible, isn't it? Isn't it?
Open your eyes and look at what you did!
Look, or I'll cut your eyelids right off your face.
Most shows peter out and lose steam over time, while Dexter remained at the same pace, full speed off of a cliff, unaware that its decisions were driving its fans away. Its failure resting upon the fact that it never defined its protagonist. You cannot build a show around a character you do not understand and are afraid to explore. Dexter follows Dexter Morgan, who spends his days as a blood-splatter forensic analyst and his nights as a serial killer. Each season follows a new killer in Miami that is in some way tied to Dexter. Even for its time of release, exclusivity on a premium network, and dark subject matter, Dexter indulges in lots of soap opera drama and plotlines. From the structure of investigations, characters' love lives, and friendships, in lots of ways, Dexter feels a bit dated for a show that ended just over 10 years ago. But what trumps all of those cliches is Dexter Morgan. That within a safe and predictable environment exists someone in the shadows, feeling comfortably out of place in the world around him. The main draw of the show is Dexter's identity. While he is a serial killer, Dexter is charmingly socially awkward, and his attempts at blending into everyday life are enjoyable to watch. It helps to loosen a character with comedy, but that is not enough to excuse murder in a show that is played straight.
Where's my dog? What'd you do with it?
Dexter gets the audience to root for him because he upholds the code that his adoptive father instilled: never get caught, and only kill people who are guilty of murder. Just as the saying goes, if there is a gun hanging on the wall in the first act, it must fire in the last. If you present a code for a character to follow, it must be tested. The writers tried their best to avoid ever facing it, but you cannot avoid the inevitable. The seasonal villain structure sets up the idea that the final murderer to be hunted is Dexter himself, and what lengths will he go to hide his secret? How true is Dexter to the code when his life is on the line? In the first 2 seasons, the most enjoyable dynamic is between Dexter and the detective Dokes.
You think I'm here to invite you to my nephew's bris?
I didn't know you were Jewish.
Shut the fuck up.
The only person in the force that notices how strange Dexter really is. Throughout season 1, Dokes exists to create a bridge of tension between Dexter's day job and his night one. If any fingers are pointed at Dexter, Dokes will pounce, and the show will end.
Surprise, motherfucker.
Are you following me now?
All conversations with other members of the force serve to reaffirm the status of the case with the audience, while Dokes does the same, but with added tension. I wanted him to be in every scene with Dexter, not at each other's throats, but present. And this is what all of the fans, including the writers, wanted. But someone can only be suspicious for so long before they have to make a decision, and that would all come to an end in Season 2, Episode 9, where Dokes' suspicions are proven right.
I always knew there was something with you. But this shit?
Dexter is able to capture Dokes in a cage, where he must decide what to do with him, as the police will eventually close in on the location where Dokes is held. This is the first time that the code has ever been tested in the series. The issue isn't if Dexter would be caught or not, it's if Dokes should be killed.
What's it gonna be? Kill me now, set me free! You only have 2 choices, Morgan! You can't fucking ignore me!
Dokes is not a murderer, and therefore, to eliminate him would be a violation of the code. The second that Dexter makes a decision outside of this code, he can never go back. He will be forever changed. Releasing Dokes is not a reasonable option either, as we know Dexter cannot stand against the evidence, or Dokes' persistence to punish him. The writers have essentially written themselves into a corner. It is a fitting point in the narrative for Dexter and Dokes' confrontation to happen, but by Dexter winning, the show will end. Dexter will just be an unforgivable cop killer, not a killer of killers. The writing rule, coincidence can get a character into trouble but not out of it, doesn't exactly happen. But a crazy girl Dexter knows decides to make the decision for him, sneaking into the house and blowing it up with Dokes inside. This gives Dexter the perfect opportunity to kill her, as she is now within the confines of the code, and continue on his way. Dokes is framed and all loose ends have been tied up. And what many fans of the show view as a thrilling way to end the best dynamic of the series, this was when Dexter jumped the shark. And it's not because of the coincidences, or that we didn't know what Dexter would have chosen. It's because the writers didn't care. The storyline is fine as long as it's engaging and dramatic. It doesn't matter that Dexter is cheated out of growth. The writers want Dexter to remain the same across the entire series, until they must decide where he stands in the end. There is absolutely no longevity in this mindset, because what makes Dexter interesting, what separates him from another murderer, is the people around him. Like an addict, Dexter continues to kill, regardless of the fact that people around him will be impacted. And in the case of Dokes, they were not close or friends, but Dokes is innocent, just like everyone else. Dexter's friends and even family are his enemies. Police trying to catch murderers in Miami, murderers like Dexter. And this conflict between Dexter's 2 identities is what makes his code so interesting. Season 4 would present Dexter with an opportunity for growth. Season 3 was not only inconsistent, but continued to avoid presenting Dexter with any complications with his code. Well, not exactly. Dexter actually does break his code, a few times throughout the series. However, this isn't showing Dexter's laziness, it's the writers. A lot of them are justifiable if you perform mental gymnastics, but at that point, is it a code or a recommendation of guidelines? At the same time, the writers have Dexter struggle with the fact that he can never go against the rules he has set when it works for the story. An incredibly annoying contradiction that leaves us to only consider and value the code in the story when Dexter outright tells us to. Where the real growth occurs is through his family. Dexter has a child with his now wife Rita and is experiencing changes. Dexter was initially asexual, using his relationship with Rita as a cover, filling societal expectations, but eventually falls in love with her, stating that he doesn't believe he is faking it anymore. This progression of Dexter's character further adds more weight to his criminal activity. It makes the bloodlust more thrilling and riskier now that he has people paying attention to him and a family to think about when making decisions. And more importantly, when suspicion arises or he is caught, his family will be thrown around in the drama, heightening the impact of Dexter's code. Season 4 ends in the shocking murder of Rita, and just as she died, so did Dexter in the eyes of critics and fans alike. The season finale perfectly ties up thematically, with Dexter's son witnessing the death of his mother, just as his father did. But as the credits roll, the question isn't, what will Dexter do next? It's, what can Dexter do next? Just like Dokes' death, another writing decision, made without considering the potential future repercussions. Major character development with Dexter opening up to his family is no more. At this point, all side characters have their own soap opera storylines, and don't need Dexter unless it's in the office. When trying to figure out what went wrong in the second half of the show, the most common reason to point the finger at is the showrunner leaving after season 4. It's surprising that there are still 4 more seasons in the show, when it's tough to even think what could happen in the next. The 2018 show Barry showed us what Dexter could have been if it had only run for 4 seasons, or at least cut its rundown significantly.
You want to know what I'm good at? I'm good at killing people.
The similarities between the shows, especially in the first season, are pretty obvious, even though they are thematically different. Both follow murderers who like to wear Henleys, attempting to live normal lives. Barry was able to avoid the pitfalls of Dexter because it witnessed what not to do. Barry doesn't have a code like Dexter, but he is constantly forced to make decisions that conflict with his morals, vowing to be done with the business but choosing to kill so he can continue living in what appears to be a normal life. Dexter, on the other hand, wants to kill.
Don't forget, tell the universe what you need.
I really need to kill somebody.
The main episodic element of Dexter's continuous bloodlust really staggers the appearance of any growth. When Barry says,
I'm done, Fuchs. Starting now. Starting right now. Starting now.
we still have 3 seasons of a show left. He isn't going to change instantly, but he will try and fail so the show continues, and Barry is allowed to grow elsewhere while still staying grounded in his criminal activity. Dexter never has this moment in the show. He learns to love his family for real, but he wants to love them and love killing. A major difference. The last 4 seasons of Dexter are nothing like the previous. The loss of Rita has removed Dexter's forward momentum of growth, but also the only stakes left. What plays out is a series of love and loss, and killers that seem far disconnected from Dexter. Trial and error of establishing new relationships with Dexter, in an attempt to rekindle the hole that Rita left behind, or the little bit of humanity left in the show. Replacing the stakes of Rita's relationship with Dexter's adoptive sister Deb, something that everyone was hoping would never develop.
I fucking told my brother that I love him.
That's big, isn't it?
Deb was the only character left who could have caught Dexter as they were close, but she accepts him as a killer quickly. The twists and turns feel even more undeserved than in earlier seasons. Dexter's colleagues even figure out a secret identity, and to put more salt in the wound left behind with Dokes' death, Deb swoops in last second to save Dexter from breaking his code. What seemed like the endgame of the show, the moment where Dexter switches in the audience's eyes from hero to villain, is taken away so one more season can happen. Dexter will never be the final villain. He will be the tragic hero. And the writers are still aware of this dilemma of the code. At one point, Dexter considers breaking it, because killing someone who isn't a murderer is making sure he doesn't get caught.
She doesn't even begin to meet the code. It's the only option.
This would have been a perfect segue into Dexter slowly creating exceptions until he is finally unbounded. But that might make him unlikable. It might make him too real. The end of Barry did what Dexter could never do. They made sure everyone knew he was a villain. No matter what side we see of him, his capacity to love and his desire to live a normal life, none of that matters because he kills. In the Dexter finale, we are meant to sympathize with him, to feel bad at this moment, 8 seasons in. Because Dexter's sister died, we somehow forgive him for all the lives he has taken. And we are meant to feel sad that he never got to run away with his Hannah, a woman who he feels connected to because she is a killer. Dexter is offered the insane privilege of choosing to say goodbye. The true main antagonists, his now friends at Miami PD, send him on his way, never to really know what had happened. The only ones who could have pushed his character to the limit, smile and wave goodbye. And in the end, Dexter lives out a life, alone in a lumber yard. He gets away with it. To blame Dexter's writers solely on the lack of character development seems a little unfair. Showtime was clearly not prepared for how big of a hit Dexter would be, and wanted to milk it for everything it had, supposedly forcing Dexter to escape alive so it could be later continued. Dexter failed because if its character was defined as a villain, as who he really is, he couldn't exist in this charming cable police drama. And that's all the network wanted, a police drama, not a character study. It sounds like I'm trashing the show or cliché police dramas, but I'm not. There is enjoyment to be found in them. After all, they, including Dexter, found success. The issue being that Dexter wasn't just a special idea. It could have been great. It just didn't want to be anything more. What really cuts deep about watching a show like Dexter is the feeling that you care more than its creators. Dexter was on track to rank amongst the greatest television shows of all time, but it decided to play to as wide of an audience as possible for as long as it could run. Far more interested in elaborate drama than the complex character they created. And a show that plays for everyone is for nobody.